better than this.
I mean, it's harvest time.
Just to watch it live, you know?
There's
Like
certain
those
people in
split
meetings
mainstream.
and some people don't want. Oh, me.
Yeah, so here I am. Booting up my computer and she's like, with my husband's
Your phone, you know.
what? I don't have a phone on my phone. I don't have it linked, and so.
Oh, I,
you
you know
I need to link it to my phone. I have all my other.
Well, that's what I was trying to accomplish for you.
Well,
I said you were trying to
You
cover.
try to make excuses.
I said, well, it's harvest time and, you know, it's rained all day and I moved off.
Because I get it on my,
And I looked
separate,
down like a public
Gmail.
Yeah, I do.
I don't think it's here.
Well, we did,
My
like,
Gmail, and now this
the last meeting,
and I
we
switched.
did say.
Oh, yeah, I know I can do that. I know I can do that.
This is my personal, and this is this one. So I just go
I
back
just
and
double
forth,
checked before I came.
and then you can,
Well, I didn't.
Oh, I wonder if you
I
were
need to do it.
drive there.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I have my.
you know, I go to work, and I limit it to a local, Comcast company in Illinois, everybody said, oh, Gmail, Hotmail, it's universal. The big company, everything's now, if I'm on my phones, contact me, and it's wrong. You know, listen to me. You know, because I'm gonna sit and live there forever, or have the same. Oh, yeah, I'm not saying that, but I moved and don't use Comcast anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't like say it somewhere.
Here, can't hear.
No, we can't.
Oh, would you think we were there? Yeah, because I can't.
So.
Yes, exactly, that's what I should have done. You know, I would have to get,
I'm just getting logged in here.
it would cost me a lot of money, so. Write it in my hand. That happens to us.
Like I said, when you pull that ass, it's like, there's no license. Some standard. It's my Sure.
Really, it did. Of course.
It is 6 o'clock and I'm going to call this meeting to order. Has the meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has been, and we do not have mics tonight, so please speak up. It should be picked up by the camera, but I just want to make sure that when you're talking, you're using a voice about as loud as I am now.
All right. Next up is the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Ann and Jeff? Any discussion on this? All right, seeing none, we will just start this vote with Ann.
Yes.
Justin?
Yes.
Lena?
Yes.
Joni?
Yes.
Mandy?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, passes 9-0. All right, moving on. Director of Curriculum and Instruction, I don't think we have nothing.
We do not, Heather is not able to do
All
that.
right. Then moving on to the Business Manager report.
I just have two things that I wanted to update you on, just informational in regards to leading up to our meeting in November. First thing, I had a Zoom meeting with our insurance broker at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and I just received insurance renewals for our health insurance plan starting January 1st. Wanted to at least take a look at that and kind of digest it before the meeting on November 13th. Group health did come back. Initially, it was a 16% increase, but if we do a 9-month renewal with them, it actually decreases to 12. It was 14, it's down to 12. So our budget, we had an increase of 9%. So things are looking a little bit closer if we want to renew with group health.
And group health is the USI on top of it, is that correct?
Yep, I should open that so
So.
you can see.
In the attachment.
First one?
Yes.
Yep, the first attachment, yeah, the first attachment has a breakdown of all of our current plan, and then on the first page it shows a renewal plan, sticking with what we have. And then there's actually on the first page, option 1, 2, and 3 with Dean. And then there's a page 2 that shows option 4, 5, 6, and 7. 2 of those options are with courts, and 2 of them are with security. So the other attachments I put on there are a Dean provider kind of map to show you how it may impact employees, and I did the same thing for security health.
The one thing I would just mention about the provider maps is you'll see on one of the maps, Adams is the upper end, Adams County, and on the other, Adams is the lower end. So we're kind of in this middle zone of healthcare providers that doesn't necessarily work to our advantage or to our employees' advantage when they're considering providers or providers that they already have relationships with.
Yeah, so just take a look at those. I did put there that increase from to 12% would cost us about $75,000. The impact on our staff would be about $6 a paycheck for single plans and about $16 per paycheck for family plans. Obviously, other plans, the courts, the dean, the security, I'll get into in November, but I just wanted you to take that information and wrap your head around a little bit as a precursor to a discussion on November 13th.
I
And
just
then-
have one, going to a 9-month plan, what
Yep.
would be benefits, you know,
Yep.
to where we get to the end of August?
Good question. So I did get some historical context. The reason we switched initially to a January 1st renewal date was because group health was probably the best option at that time, and they only offered a January 1st renewal date. They didn't offer a 9/1 at that point. So that's why the district went to a January 1st. The benefit of going to a September 1st renewal year would be that we would typically get renewals in probably like the beginning of March, end of February, beginning of March. And then that allows us to talk staff, salary, and benefit packages all at the same time before we do contracts and before we get into the upcoming, I should say, the following budget year then. So, yeah, there's some budget benefits, and then also I think just some benefits for the board and staff to talk about a total package. So.
Thank you.
And I was gonna ask you regarding the mapping, that means just their, primary doctor that they would see, but if somebody needed to go to Madison, let's say, for special treatments and such, and their doctor has recommended that, does that mean that it doesn't cover it then, because it's not inside the?
It could be considered out of network.
It could be considered out of network, and I'm assuming on like security, they'd send you north, probably to Marshfield, and then Dean would most likely send you south to St. Mary's in Madison. So that would be the difference if you had a major medical or a specialist that you'd probably have to go to. With security, you're going north somewhere, and then with Dean, you're going south somewhere. So.
So some security health, they do cover out network too, at the same costs. So, I'm just saying some plans do.
Oh yeah, ours would not. Like there would be a separate deductible for that security. So, and like I said, I'm digesting this, and I'll probably in the next few weeks send out a survey to staff let them know what this information is and get their feedback on what their thoughts are in regards to potentially paying less, but having possibly an inconvenience of going north or south. So I'll bring that in November as well. And then the second thing, just wanted to give you an update. I talked to Mr. Ringer after our last board meeting, and you may have noticed that the baseball dugouts are being redone. They were rotting, so Matt Blakely and Mr. Ringer took the lead on replacing them. The total cost is going to be around $30,000, but thanks to a bunch of donations from local people, and then utilizing Matt's fundraising account, the total cost of the district's only going to be about 40% of that, about $12,500 out of the 30 total. So I'll be bringing those donations, because there is some concrete that just got done. I got that today, to the November meeting as well. So just wanted to make you aware of that going on in case you see someone in the grocery store and ask what's going on, and you can kind of let them know like what our expense will be, and that's part of our regular budget. Our cost is. So yeah, so that is the update.
Thank you. Board of Education? Anybody have anything? Okay, seeing none. Tom?
I was just going to mention that 6 of us plus myself, so 6 board members plus myself attended the WASD regional meeting in the Dells a couple weeks ago. We got to hear about, we got to hear a keynote presentation, we got to hear about legislative update, and also heard about some upcoming training opportunities for board members. So thank you, we had a good turnout and a nice evening.
It was a great meal.
It actually was a good meeting, I was surprised.
It's good. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn into closed session? Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. I think we have, mainly just consideration and action to a staffing change. So do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
We also have a resignation as well.
One resignation?
And some hirings.
Yep.
Is it- Click onto those so we can go.
The music.
All right, so we got a motion by Jeff,
I'll second.
a second by Mandy. We'll go through these. So we got them all on the consent agenda. Consent agenda, I'm sorry, everybody. We will just click on. All right, so. Resignation of Michaela Larrabee, professional, I'm sorry. Then we have a staffing change for Ashley Hildebrand. And then we have hiring recommendations for Shannon Cote, music director, hiring recommendation for Brad Randall, music director assistant, and hiring recommendation for Jamie Meinhardt, musical director assistant. Discussion on that. Okay, seeing none, we'll start this vote with Justin.
Yes.
Lena,
Yes.
Joni,
Yes.
Mandy,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
and my vote is yes, passes 9-0. All right, next up is new business. So first thing on is the levy.
Yay.
All right, yeah, so on the agenda item, if you all don't mind clicking on it's actually the third one, it says AF 2023-2024 levy meeting, October 23rd, 2023 final. When that opens, it'll be a PDF, and you should see the revenue limit as your first slide. And I'm just gonna go through this. I wanna point out a few things. I'm not gonna, this first screen is super overwhelming, I'm not gonna go through that in detail. But I just wanna point out some things, and as we go along, if you have any questions, I can stop and answer them. So this is the final revenue limit worksheet. Just a reminder, our budget year started July 1st. We get final numbers on October 15th per state statute. So up until then, we are projecting and estimating what those numbers are gonna be. Three of them to point out are our student count, student membership, which is kind of the lower left. There's a block of yellow rows. So we wait for that. We have to estimate the third Friday count. That's part of this. And then on the very bottom of the left side, you'll see at the very bottom, if you zoom in a little bit, that is our, the equalized value. So the total property value, that is actually given to us by the Department of Revenue on October 1st. So until then, we're projecting that. And then the other final piece this year is over on the right side, and it's line 12A, about 3/4 of the way down. And that's the amount that the state's gonna give us in aid. So, three major things being the student count, the property values, and the state aid end up on the very bottom with our total levy, and then the levy rate. And the levy rate is in mills. So you see it's 0.00614,373. Just move the decimal a few spots, and our mill rate is $6.14 per $100,000 officially.
Per 1,000.
Sorry, per 1,000. Yeah, not per 100,000.
Okay, and can I just add a few things?
Yep.
So what Mr. Cry was saying, line 12A is the state portion, the equalized aid portion of what we get. And then line 16, that $13.7 million is what is generated through local property taxes. Right, so I can't remember what the exact percentages are between, I think you're gonna get.
That's on that. You'll get that. Yeah, it's about 78 to 22%. So I'll get that.
It's all created on a formula.
And this is the sheet, this is everything, right? So, and actually, if you wanna go to the next page, this is how the state calculates, page 2 is how the state calculates how much money are they gonna give us, okay, in regards to state aid. Believe it or not, this one is probably more complicated than the previous one. It looks a little simpler, but in the end, in the bottom right corner, you can see that $5,373,921 is what they're going to give us in regards to state aid. The major factors are, our student count, but also it's the property value per student. So, if we jump ahead to the next slide, the breakdown, page 3, you can see this year of our total levy, 78% is gonna come from local taxes, and 22% is gonna come from state aid. And please note that these percentages vary district to district. If you have a very small district with low property value and a bunch of kids, you're gonna actually get a lot more state aid based on the formula. Okay, that's the basics of it. So because we're very big and we have a ton of property value, and based on the districts in the state, we don't have a ton of kids, we get a lot less aid than other districts. So they consider, I would say, they consider us property rich, and we don't quote unquote need it as much.
So we look very wealthy per student in this formula because we have a lot of property and therefore property value behind each student.
Yep.
And it's just the way the formula is developed. So we look wealthier, and I haven't looked this year, but historically, we've looked like we've had more wealth behind each student in Adams Friendship than Wanakee does, as an example, behind each of their schools.
That'd be one.
And it's just because the amount
So what I did then was I just wanted to break down those three factors. So the first factor, which actually is line 10A on page 1, is the referendum. And if we had not passed the referendum in April, we'd be looking at about a $2 million deficit in this current school year. So that referendum is on the revenue limit. It increases that levy by $3 million. It allows us to continue with our current programming. Page 5 then, the state budget. So another reason the levy increased quite a bit this year, number 1 was the referendum, and number 2 would be that the state increased the amount that we're gonna receive per kid. It went from $10,000 for our district to $11,000, and then it will raise another $325 next year, which is a lot per kid. I'll kind of get to in a few slides why it's good, but it's not great. And then the third one, we're getting down to page 6, would be student enrollment. So student enrollment is a factor. I kind of gave you an overview. This number that I'm giving you is kids in seats. So these are the kids that are actually sitting in our schools.
Not membership count, not to be confused with what's calculated on the revenue report.
On page 2, yeah, that's different, a little more complicated, and I'd be happy to go through that at any time. But these are our kids in seats, and that's what makes sense. We were projecting around 1,280 kids in our forecast model, and the kids in our seats on the 3rd Friday in September totaled 1,291. So a little bit higher than we were anticipating. And then just a note too, that last school year, 314 school districts in Wisconsin had declining enrollment. So we're not the only ones declining. 3/4 of all school districts in Wisconsin are going down as well. Yeah, and then page 7 is the first overview of getting to the mill rate, which most people, if they're watching online or they came here tonight, are interested in. The increase in the mill rate I put will most likely increase property taxes. I can't tell anyone what their individual property tax bill is going to do or be, but the mill rate is higher than last year. Last year was $5.33. This year it's $6.14. During the referendum campaign, we were projecting $6.58. So the bad news is it has risen. The good news is it's not as high as we were projecting. To note, the last 2 years, the $5.33 last year, mill rate was the lowest since 1984, and then the $6.14 this fall is the second lowest since 1984. So, just for some historical perspective. Any questions on that? I'll flip. The next page kind of provides an impact on page 8, an impact on property value. So going from $5.33 to $6.14, and this is an estimate that a projected that a taxpayer would pay $81 more than last year per $100,000 of value. And depending on which municipality you live in, depending on reassessments, it might be different. It's not everyone's going to pay this amount equally. Just a note, I think I talked about this last time, but the equalized value, the value of our properties in Adams Friendship School District increased at 22.24%. That comes from the Department of Revenue. Last year was 15.46. So we had assumed a 13% increase at the annual meeting in August, much higher than anticipated. And we'll see, I guess we'll continue to monitor to see if we keep climbing that high.
So that's a very high increase, obviously. You can talk about 37% across our district over a 2-year period. And I'm going to say it, the school district has nothing to do with that. Those are controlled, the assessments are controlled by the municipalities.
Yep. Now page 9, I just wanted to give you some context. $325 per, well, first of all, $10,000 to $11,000 for us this year is what we get per pupil Next year we'll get $325. And I think it's important to point out that like, it's not a game changer or a windfall of revenue. So, my association, WASBO, Wisconsin Association of School Business Officials, put this together for some historical perspective. 2009-10, if we just look at the class of 2023 that graduated last spring, in 2009-2010, that was the first year that there was not an inflationary increase provided to schools per pupil. So what that chart does on the right side of the screen there around that page is, it shows how much the state approved in their state budget, increase or decrease per pupil for the class of 2023. And there are some years missing, but those are pretty much zero. And the far right column shows how much behind inflation we have been since 2009-10. So if the state had just kind of continued the inflationary increases since 2009-2010, you know, the class of 2023 is short about $3,235 per kid. You start doing some multiplication, take that times 1,290, it's a lot of money. So while the 325, like I said, per pupil is great, it almost feels like a little bit of a makeup from what's been going on the last decade. So just wanted to show that to you all. Any questions on that? And I did try to source everything at the bottom. And then I guess the question always is, well, what did schools do? And we're well aware. How have we coped with not getting that funding? And it's been referendums and using fund balance. So that's all the next slide had. 2022 had 92 operational referendums, which is quite a bit. Next page on 11 is just a mill rate comparison. I don't have them from this year because everyone's having these meetings and then we have to enter them online. So we're at 614 this year. If you take a look at that, either the chart on the left or the graph on the right, we pretty much fit into where we were last year. We might jump Tri-County, not sure, but we're still probably just below the average in regards to our neighbors and comparables. So, and then page 12. Don't get overwhelmed by all the commas and zeros. I like to show this because this shows, if we look in the middle, the top, right in the middle, there's a column that says 2023 equalized valuation. So those are the numbers from the Department of Revenue for each municipality that's listed on the left. That total number, the $2.2 billion, that's what's on our revenue limit worksheet. And the next column over shows what percent of the district they make up. And then the next column is the change from the previous year. So it's almost like how much of the Adams Friendship pie do you make up, and did it increase or decrease from last year? And then what we do, like Tom said, we don't come up with these values. What we do is, per your approval tonight with the total levy, I will literally send the city of Adams a document that says the school levy for the city of Adams is $595,393, and then they divide that up. So I just like to note that because we don't have a lot to do with individual property tax bills. This is our job. So all those amounts in the far right column, I send that to each of those municipalities, and then they divide it up. Does that make sense? Okay. Flip, page 13. The one thing I do want to note is part of the state budget is the school levy tax credit. So when you get your property tax bill, there will literally be a line that says school taxes reduced by school levy tax credit. The state budget increased that from about, this is for the whole state, 900 and some million to like $1.1 billion. So I'm estimating that our district alone is gonna see about that we're gonna get about $2.4 million of that, and that's gonna be distributed to our taxpayers. I don't know how they distribute it, I have no clue. But the key is, when we hear the state say, money put into education, just know that that $1.1 billion is actually education money.
It's property tax relief.
But we don't get any of it,
You
yeah.
don't get any of it. So if you go back to page 9, I'd like you to do this. Go back to page 9, if you don't mind. And on the right-hand side, you'll see that in 2021-22 and 22-23, $0 were added to school budgets. At the same time, our elected officials were running around saying that they were making unprecedented historical investments in public schools. Those are quotes. They put money in education during those 2 years, but not one penny went to schools. It all went to the school levy tax credit, property tax relief.
So that was just a big change in the state budget, and I just wanted to point that out, that there will be, some relief in regards to school taxes listed. So just check that out. Everyone's will be different. The next page is something that also was a pretty big part of the state budget. The amount that the state is providing to voucher schools increased tremendously. So if we go back, if you go all the way back to the first page, if you want to scroll up, line 10H, there's a line that says private school voucher aid deduction, and it's $166,716. That is money that our taxpayers are required to pay to fund the private voucher system.
Mr. Crowley, are there any private voucher schools that are?
Actually, I had to ask him that.
There are 0
Yeah,
private voucher schools in our district.
Right, but there was some voucher money that went down Milwaukee from the Noble Sheriff Fund.
Well, that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
I mean, these are local property tax dollars that are going to fund the private voucher program in the state of Wisconsin. And our revenue limit per child is $11,000. I believe the private voucher schools get how much per child, Brian? You know what
I don't remember.
It's over $12,000 per child. Just interesting how our state is elected to invest in their educational resources.
Well, I think it's just important to know, because we always put the revenue limit in this workbook, and I don't want somebody to be like, oh, where's that money going? We're levying for it. So I think it's important for you to know that that's a large number that goes there. And it's about, I put on the page 14, that's about 7 cents on our mill rate that it increases. So it's about $7 for each $100,000 of property value. So I just wanted to point those two things out, because they were, in regards to the voucher and the school levy tax credits, there were significant increases in the state budget. And I just wanted to make you aware of that. So I'll kind of pause there. Any questions? Yeah.
Do you know anything about the grant that came to Wisconsin for the charter schools?
I don't know.
It was like $550,000 or something like that.
I'm not sure. All right. The next part you've seen before. What I did was I just wanted to give you an update on where our final budget from August to now. I gave you the fund definitions are on page 15, and then if we go to page 16, an overview of the general fund. So this is our largest fund. We're looking at a surplus of $914,822. The change from August is, number one, we approved an English language teacher. So I just put in a budget line of $90,000, and that's salary and benefits, that's everything. And then the voucher school expense, which I got on the revenue limit on October 15th was a little bit of a surprise. So that was the other reason that expenditures, we counted as an expenditure increased. Down below that, budget revenues, we actually received notes of some grants last week in August, Title V and Peer Mentor grant. And then the final revenue limit did increase some revenues. And then the budget expenditures, Title V then expenses, Peer Mentor grant expenses, open enrollment in and out, changed a little bit from projected, and then our final or actual amounts for staff salary and benefits are calculated in there. So surplus, pretty much where we were in August, less that English language teacher and the voucher school expense. Slide 17, just go to the budget impact. And this is more of a reminder. We, gonna have a budget surplus right now of $914,000, but we do have some, significant deficits that we'll need to address in the next couple of years. And Tom asked me when will we get the updated financial forecast, and I'm hoping to have something by the December meeting where I can give you an update on, hey, here's where we should be compared to last year in regards to the next 5 years. Page 18 and 19, really no changes. A few changes to special education, finalizing staff salary and benefits, and then a student adjustment. Page 20, no changes at all. Page 21 is our food service program. I know we had a discussion about that in August about the deficit. And I was able to talk to Rosie more about some capital expenditures that were budgeted last year. And we don't plan on having to replace any major capital pieces like freezers or coolers, those major things that food service needs this year. So we are looking at a deficit of about $116,000 in the food service fund this year, which is much more in line than we had initially projected. And then Fund 80, no changes. And everything, this document along with the revenue limit and final budget document I did load to the website just a little bit ago. That can be found there, and happy to take questions on that if there are any. And it's a lot. Like I get like school finance is a lot. If you have any questions or you want to stop in and go over something or give me a call or shoot me an email, I'm happy to go through this. The state aid formula is one thing, the revenue limit's another. It is a lot. But if you have questions and you want me to break down maybe one piece of it, just let me know. I'm happy to help.
I think you did a great job. Wow. Just
No,
to
thanks,
be able
yeah.
to explain it. I looked at all that before I came in here. I was like, oh.
There's a lot of spreadsheets involved. That's okay. So.
And it's very complex. It's very complex.
All right. So we will need a motion for setting the levy.
Mill rate and budget.
Sorry. Yes. So we need the number in there, that's 6.14, correct? Or just as presented?
I would use that as presented.
Okay.
Motion to approve the 2023-2024 final levy, mill rate, and budget.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the final levy and mill rate and budget. Discussion on that. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we will start this vote with Lena,
Yes.
Joni,
Yes.
Mandy,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. Passes 9-0. All right. Moving on to 5.2, purchase of a skid steer.
All right, so we discussed this actually last month at the finance committee meeting, and If you're not if you weren't there, we actually, Mr. Ringer and I put together a kind of vehicle replacement plan. So I wanted a plan in regards to, and it's not like cut and dry, but a working document that allows us to be proactive in replacing our vehicles. And this year, we have a minivan and a kind of an express van, a cargo van that are getting close to the end of life, and we don't plan on replacing them. We looked at the use of them, and we just don't feel the need to replace them. So we figured this would be the year to replace 2 maintenance items that are nearing the end of their life as well. The first is a skid steer. Mr. Ringer went out and got a bunch of quotes. The first sheet where it says skid steer quote sheet 1, that's kind of a breakdown of who he received quotes from, the model that they priced out, and then the total price. He did send requests to nearly a dozen vendors, and as this is from Mr. Ringer, I appreciate putting him on there. He would prefer to have a quote from Swiderski approved. We do have attachments that would fit either of those models, whether it's the New Holland or Bobcat, and yeah. And then he has the detail of all of those quotes on the portal as well.
Now, with the New Holland or the Bobcat, are they the same, only just have different names, or he needs both of these?
He just needs one of them, and I think he wants to go look at them both in person, which is why he asked for approval not to exceed $55,500. He wants to go there, look at them both, and then choose. So, the attachments would work for both. We have a bunch of attachments with this bucket, brush, forks, use it for snow plowing.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter which one, they all have the universal plate.
Do they? Yeah.
So does this price here cover those extra things that would?
We have those already, and we
Okay.
would not sell those attachments
Okay.
when we sell our own skid steer. So, not sure of the time out, I think he said one of them was actually in stock, but it might be gone today, and then we might have to wait 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks to get one in, so.
And then when he says he wants 55,500, and the one says 55,650.
Yep,
I think it would be better to say 55,700, just in case he wanted the 55,650.
I think he was gonna beat him up and probably get it for the.
Beat him up.
looks like he's gonna beat him up for $100 apparently.
Okay.
He's confident that getting that $100 off.
Okay, there you go.
They'll even throw in a hat.
We'll ask him now.
A couple pens.
Or a nice cool cup or something.
Yeah, do like an EMT.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to approve, to not exceed the 55,500 on the purchase of a new skid steer.
And I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the purchase of a skid steer not to exceed the 55,500 by Lena and Bobby. Discussion. Seeing none, we will start this vote with Joni,
Yes.
Mandy,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Lena.
Yes.
And my vote is yes, passes 9-0. So I mean, just so you know, the skid steer that we got is probably, will bring back a pretty good chunk of change too,
Yeah,
so.
yep, and I did after I talked to Mr. Ringer this afternoon about how much he thinks we can get for our current skid steer and for potentially this maintenance truck, that's definitely gonna be probably a little more revenue than I was anticipating in our budget too, so, yeah.
And I think he discussed this a few years ago, actually looking, and he was trying to get grant money because ours is not tier 4 compliant or whatever it is, it's older, so.
Yeah.
But the value of them is maintained on this used equipment.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep.
So, all right.
Thank you.
Next up, maintenance truck purchase.
Yeah, so this was part of our plan for the 23-24 budget as well. We currently have a 2014 Chevy 1-ton truck. It's used for plowing, salting in the winter. It's got relatively low mileage, but it definitely has some wear and tear due to it being the salt truck. Mr. Ringer talked about the new truck would serve the same purpose, but we make sure to, as he put, improved attention to the washing after chemical application to extend that life, especially with the underbody. So he went out and got some bids and quotes from AF Motors, Rapids Ford, Rudig, and Wheelers, and that summary is below. I put in bullet points, and then you can see the 5 kind of detailed quotes are underneath. So we would be looking for a motion to approve the purchase of a maintenance truck from AF Motors in the amount of $46,867.80.
All right. What is the board's pleasure?
So moved for the motion to approve the purchase of a maintenance truck from AF Motors with the amount of $46,867.80.
That's
Second.
We have, Laura?
Yes.
Sorry. Moment there. So I got a motion and a second to approve the purchase of a new work truck from AF Motors for $46,867.80. Discussion.
Now, when the purchases are made and you know how much you're getting for what you have already now, do those new numbers, then will you be coming back in and presenting those?
I'll give you some information on how much we sold those for. Yeah, I think right now with private party prices being pretty good, we're gonna attempt to sell those on our own.
Okay.
We don't plan on trading them in, so, we've had pretty good success with the Wisconsin surplus online auction. So that's where we're gonna definitely go first for those 2 items.
Okay.
I'm just glad to see that our local dealer actually came in the lowest
Yes,
here.
I know.
I know, I like doing it,
Yeah.
giving it to the local businesses.
And then we use the state discount program.
Yes.
Which helps.
And I forgot to mention that Swiderski is the state account for, like implements and stuff too, so.
All right. Any other comments, discussion? All right, seeing none, we will start this vote